For Creamer Media's Polity, I am Shannon de Rehove. Raymond Parsons, a prominent South African economist, joins me to discuss his latest book, Zumanomics Revisited. In your book, Zumanomics Revisited, you reassess the economic prospects for South Africa post-Mangaung and following the 2014 general election. What have you concluded in this reassessment?
I think the important thing for me, when I look into the crystal ball for South Africa, is we do need to think long-term, a lot more than we do now. Whether it's the government or business or labor or even the consumer, there's too much short-termism in this country, which explains a lot of the problems that we're facing at the moment, that in the past we didn't take a sufficiently long view. And of course I've been helped in this regard quite considerably by the National Development Plan, which does exactly that. It looks at 2030 and it says, what do we need to do in South Africa in order to have an economy by then which will be stronger, which will be bigger and better? Now this is a big challenge, because if you look around South Africa at the moment, there are a number of red lights flashing about our economic performance. We're not doing as well as we should be doing. And I think perhaps the most important message to me, and which I've tried to spell out in the book, and which I think is also spelled out in the National Development Plan, is that we are performing well below our potential. And the question now is, what do we need to do in order to close that gap between now and 2030? That's the big challenge that I try to address in the book with the help of the National Development Plan.
You write of a South African economy suffering a number of distinct deficits. Please elaborate on this aspect of your analysis.
Well, what I've done in the book, in looking at the National Development Plan, is to try to redefine the challenges that it spells out by using that particular conceptual framework of the tale of 5 deficits. That is the social deficit, the fiscal deficit, the trade deficit, the delivery deficit, and the trust deficit. And saying these are the 5 main deficits that we have to close in order to achieve the goals of the National Development Plan. 4 of them feed into the social deficit. In other words, the overarching one is the social deficit. And what do we need to do with the other 4 deficits in order to close the social deficit? So that's really the conceptual framework around which the book is built, in order to see, can we create a platform for the future where there will be more confidence, more trust, more collaboration, in order to close and end the tale of the 5 deficits for South Africa.
What are the conditions for the success of the National Development Plan's vision for 2030, and can it be translated into reality?
I think the first point is that the vision of the National Development Plan, and which I address in the book, has to become a shared vision among all South Africans. That's the message. Now that's possible, but it's not easy. If you look to a monument around you, for a lot of polarization in South Africa, you will see it everywhere. So there is an important challenge here, that we need to develop a shared vision. That is the beginning point. Then we translate it into reality by collaborating, by being prepared to compromise, by saying, look, there are certain ideological questions which we will put on one side. I like to say we must shed some of the isms, such as socialism and capitalism and globalism. And there's only one ism in my book, and that's pragmatism. And that's also the message of the National Development Plan. We really have to rally round in the face of some urgent and very pressing challenges to get the growth we want, to get the employment we want, to reduce the poverty that we would like to see happen, and also to reduce inequality. Now those are the challenges that are captured in that vision of the National Development Plan and the book, to say, well, we now have to grasp that shared vision and translate it into reality by not expecting the government or business or labor or the community to do it alone, by being once and for all being prepared to collaborate around a central message that will make a big difference to the future of South Africa.
You have considerable experience and analysis of South Africa's political economy. Do you believe that the country will be able to move successfully to address the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty and inequality?
The important issue here, whether it's in the public or the private sector, is the issue of delivery. where are most of the complaints in the country? If you talk to the man in the street, to the average business person, to the worker, they say, why are certain things not happening more effectively? And can we develop better instruments of delivery without worrying in the first instance, must it only be done by the government or must it only be done by the private sector? There was a famous Chinese leader who said, in explaining the economic success of China, he said, we didn't ask whether the cat was black or white as long as it caught the mice. And that is the message, the pragmatic message we must take on board to address the delivery and the lack of delivery at different levels in the country, so that on the ground you begin to make a difference in terms of unemployment, in terms of poverty, and in reducing inequality. Those are the big overarching challenges to which we now have to make a difference in the years ahead.
What are some of the tough decisions that the government will need to make if South Africa is to do better after next year's elections?
I think that the toughest decision is to confirm and reaffirm that the government's commitment to the National Development Plan is irreversible. Now, at the moment, there's a little bit of a dialogue going on within the political alliance as to exactly which aspects of the National Development Plan will be implemented now and which should be subject to further discussion. I think the important point is we must accept there is an election. There's a certain amount of tactics here in order to get past the election, but we're assuming that the government will be in fact re-elected. Then they must be able to send out a clear message to the nation, to business, to investors, and say, this is what we are going for now. There will be no more ifs and buts. We are going to do what we've said we're going to do in terms of the National Development Plan and its framework. In other words, we will mobilize the country behind this new vision. We have a mandate from the electorate to do that, and we're now going to make sure that we achieve these goals. Now that means that there will be some rather tough decisions. There will be tough decisions in the field of education. There will be tough decisions on the labor market. There will be tough decisions about government spending. These are issues that will have to be addressed in conjunction with other stakeholders so that you're sending out a message to the world and to South Africa that we are going to get on top of our challenges. We are going to be globally competitive where we've been losing ground, because unless we are globally competitive, we cannot then get the biggest share of world trade and world investment to help us achieve our socioeconomic goals. So the important decisions are going to come after the election. I think it is not right to now start nitpicking as to how far the government's got in the first few months of the National Development Plan. It is a long-term plan. The government has committed itself. We have an election over which the timing was not theirs. It's something that happens every 5 years. We must now be realistic and say, okay, but now we're watching. We as the stakeholders are watching. The world is watching. The credit agencies are watching. They're saying, are you going to hit the ground running after the election with the National Development Plan and its potential to make a very big difference to the future of South Africa? And that will be the tough decision that the government and other stakeholders have to communicate to the nation once we've got the forthcoming election out of the way.
How does Zuma's place in history fit into the National Development Plan?
Well, in my book, my thesis is that actually by the time he steps down in 2019, he will want to be able to say, I've turned this economy round now with the help of the National Development Plan. He will want, when he's re-elected, to start to think about his legacy. What legacy will he leave by 2019? And to me, it's all about our economic performance and what that will enable us to do. He will want to be able to say that people are beginning to feel better off. He will want to be able to say, look, I have given the investment community the confidence, the certainty, and the predictability they want to take their decisions in terms of the framework which has been created by the National Development Plan. So I would think that really from the point of view of President Zuma himself, when he begins to think that he's in his second and final term, he can afford to take a strong line and show the leadership that he would like to do in order to turn around our economic performance, I would think myself that for him, once the election's out of the way, 5 years is not a long time. A week may be a long time in politics, but 5 years is a very short time for a nation that wants to deliver better things to its people. So I would like to think, and that indeed is one of the things I say in the book, and there's a chapter devoted to it, I really think it's the economy that's going to be very important for his legacy by the time he steps down in 2019.
That was Raymond Parsons discussing his latest book, Zumanomics Revisited, The Road from Mangaung to 2030.